Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a chiropractic advocate connection with Bharon Hoag. Bharon, can you get us started by just introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your history or when you first initially came in contact with this chiropractic profession, with chiropractic care, and what's attracted you to really get involved with the profession?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks very much for allowing me to be a part of your podcast here, man. So my name is Bharon Hoag. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I am not a chiropractor, but I've been in the industry for 26 years. I call myself the biggest groupie the profession's ever had. I've served in a bunch of different capacities, and the more that I've been in the profession, the more I fall in love with it, and the more motivated I am to make sure that we find ways to bring it to the world. I literally, it was a God thing. I started by taking a job, didn't know what chiropractic was, knew nothing about it. There was an ad in the paper. It fit with where I was at in my life at the time. I took the job. The whole thing kind of freaked me out a little bit, if I'm being honest. I didn't know anything. And I just all of a sudden got put in this clinic where this guy's doing only what I saw on TV, but it wasn't to restore life. Like, it was to take life. So I'm just like, I was very, very disconnected and had a lot to learn, to say the least. But through a series of events and God's grace, I got bit with the bug. It was intellectual. I didn't have a miraculous story myself. I just saw things and I asked a lot of questions. And when I couldn't get answers that I understood, I went somewhere else and asked more questions. I'm not that overly intelligent of a human, but I hate not knowing things. And so I'm diligent. I have no pride. I'm willing to dig on the ground to figure out what's going on. And the more I dug into this thing called chiropractic, the more blown away I was about how it resonated with what I believe, but it was really a contrast to the brainwashing I'd received growing up. And then I got really angry. And I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me this? Why isn't this information out there? This will save lives. This will literally transform the way our world operates if this is better understood. And that's kind of what's driven me over the years. So I've owned chiropractic clinics. I was a consultant for about 10 years, traveling around working with doctors. I was the executive director of the Ohio State Chiropractic Association for 6 years. I've served on the boards of national organizations throughout our profession. And now I have a nonprofit called One Chiropractic, where our mission is to make chiropractic the number one healthcare choice in the world. So done a lot of different things, but I'm just as in love with it and motivated as I ever was.
Yeah, thank you for that short, concise synopsis on just kind of the arc of transformation that you've been able to experience in the profession. Can you talk? I love the mission statement, by the way, for One Chiropractic of really, it seems to me like it's almost an offensive, like a growth and development for the profession, as opposed to a defensive, a protective, a reducing the risk of certain things that we don't want to see happen in the profession. Yet I know that that's part of what it is that your organization has been involved with, or at least acknowledges is important for the profession, right? Is for us to reduce risk of areas in the profession being eliminated or reduced or minimized, right? We want to maximize potential for this profession on the planet. So can you maybe just kind of unpack, given your experience of all this time in the profession, like where you're directing and focusing your efforts and energy these days?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at the Ohio State Chiropractic Association, I learned a lot about how the behind the scenes of our profession operates. Ohio is a very large state. We have a lot of chiropractors. We did some pretty amazing things during my tenure there, thanks to my leadership team and just the people. It was just a lot of fun. And so we got a lot of attention. I was able to work with all the national organizations. I was able to work with a lot of other strong state associations. But if I'm being honest, I got very frustrated with how our profession operates. We're 128 years old this year, and the world still doesn't have a clue who we are. And it's very frustrating to me that we're as amazing as we are. The offering we have has literally no negative side effects at all. And yet the world still has no clue who we are. And it's because we're the only trade that circles the wagon and shoots inwards. We spend more time fighting with each other than we do finding the things we agree on and moving forward. And I was very frustrated at this time. And a mentor of mine gave me this quote from Buckminster Fuller that said you cannot change an existing reality by fighting it. You need to create a new model that makes the old model obsolete. And so I took that to heart. And that's why I left the association and I created One Chiropractic with a group of individuals. We wanted to do something different. We wanted an organization that was limber, able to move on the dime. One of my hindrances with the associations, whether it's a state or national, is you've got to get the board on board. You've got to get the membership on board. And then if half of your membership doesn't like it, you're spending months fighting them because they're trying to sabotage the effort because they don't want their money being used for, and it's just so convoluted. And by the end of the day, we missed opportunities that existed to advance the profession because we couldn't get along as a body. And it was very frustrating as an executive director, working so hard to make these opportunities, to find out that my own people were sabotaging the work. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. We're going to move this profession forward despite the infighting that happens within the profession itself. And so we created an organization that's a nonprofit, but it functions like a corporation. So I don't have members, I have contributors. And so I don't need their permission to do things. They vote with their checkbook. If they don't like the stuff we do, they stop contributing. And so we were able to really jump on top of a lot of issues that we were seeing in the profession. And so we kind of have two sides to what we do. One Chiropractic is the mother organization. From the defense side, we created what's called the Chiropractic Defense Council. That is where we protect the rights of practicing chiropractors around the world. We're in a number of different situations right now. We're fighting for the rights of chiropractors in British Columbia, where their regulatory board took away their right to do routine x-rays. So anyone that does CBP or Activator or Gonstead, they can no longer do films like they want to without risk of losing their license. So we've hired attorneys and we're working to fix that issue. We're working in Australia and Canada and New Zealand when COVID hit and when they did mandates for vaccines, even 7 states here in the United States. We were the organization that hired the attorneys to defend the rights to keep chiropractors practicing if they chose not to want to be vaccinated. And so our whole purpose is to protect the rights of the practicing chiropractor. So there's a defensive side to that, but there's also an offensive side. So right now, and this is crazy, in Australia right now, if a patient goes and reviews their chiropractor and the chiropractor goes and likes the review, they get fined $10,000 because that's considered false advertising. It's just asinine. So we've developed a whole strategy working with our legal team, and we're fighting for the rights of our doctors to be able to tell the story of chiropractic. So the Chiropractic Defense Council is there because our profession deserves to have someone step up when it's under attack, to be able to respond immediately, not take 6 months to raise money, interview attorneys. We have over 40 attorneys worldwide that are already trained on our issues, that already understand. So the minute something happens, we can deploy them, and we're immediately doing injunctions, immediately jumping on top of that. And our profession has never had that in the history of the profession. So we're very proud of what we've built over the last 3 years. We're in 9 countries. In the United States specifically, we're working to get chiropractors as commissioned officers in our military. It's kind of our last frontier. Right now, our active duty military don't have access to chiropractic. TRICARE, their insurance doesn't cover it, and chiropractors cannot serve as chiropractors in the service, any branch. And so we've been working for the last 2.5 years to break down those walls within the Department of Defense. And we're very close. We've really done a lot of great work. So that's more the advocacy side of One Chiropractic as an organization. When we find there's discrimination, when we find there's areas where chiropractic has not been accepted or allowed in, we will spend the time. They're long games. These are long battles. None of them are going to happen overnight. And that's why none of the other organizations have been successful, because they don't have the financing, they don't have the structure to sustain these super long battles. They need quick wins, which is fine. That's not a knock on them. That's their structure. And that's why an organization like ours was needed to be able to take on these things, to be able to spend millions of dollars on something. But we're gonna win, because the way that we generate revenue is it's a monthly subscription. People give us $33 a month based on the 33 principles. And we have thousands of people doing that all over the world. And so we're able to sustain these long battles because of the way that our economic structure is built, again, which is very different than other organizations in the profession. So really, our goal is to make chiropractic the #1 healthcare choice in the world. We do that by defending it. We do that by advancing those opportunities that we have largely been held away from, and breaking down those walls.
Very awesome. Awesome work. And obviously very important and pointed work. And obviously you have to go through and prioritize what deserves your attention and focus, because I imagine there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of isolated experiences that take place where you're called upon to help that isolated thing, but maybe from a bigger picture standpoint, it doesn't warrant investing too much resource
Yeah.
in that direction, right? Because how big is your organization as far as people? Like you said, there's 30 lawyers on staff from nine different countries. I'm paraphrasing, so
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. But how
So
many
we have
people
40
are?
attorneys. Yep,
Okay.
40 attorneys worldwide. And I have a small team of 5 individuals that help me with the administrative, marketing, all the back end. I mean, because the disadvantage of our economic structure is every single month we're running around 3,600 credit cards. And so you have expiration dates that go out. So there's a lot of administrative stuff that goes into that, but there's only 5 of us. We're very lean. Like one of our commitments is that 95% of everything that comes into our organization is going to the fight. It's not going in. A lot of nonprofits love to pad the books when you find out only like $2 of your $10 are going towards the cause. We make our finances available on our website. You can see exactly where our money's coming from, where it's going, what country we're putting it into, where, is it going to attorneys? Is it going to lobbyists? Where's it going? We wanted to be transparent because our job is to spend money. I mean, we're dealing with attorneys and lobbyists. I mean, it's $700 an hour attorneys. I mean, it's not, but I will tell you right now, as of today, we're 701-0. We have never lost a battle we've taken on. And these battles will range anywhere from an individual complaint from a regulatory board to a chiropractor, or it's a big case like the x-ray issue we're dealing with in British Columbia. So our attorneys are amazing, but they're expensive. And so we don't ask them to cut their rates. We pay them because we want to be their best client. We want them to give us their best. But you're right. One of the things you commented, which is a struggle for me, is we are very narrow. We defend the rights of practicing chiropractors, period. So during the pandemic issue, and especially out in California, there are so many issues that Bharon, as the human, I would love to take on, because my belief system, like, I can't stand that they're vaccinating kids. I can't stand that they're still masking people in certain parts of California. But those are not in the purview of protecting the rights of practicing chiropractors, right? So we are a defense organization, but if I started taking on all of these ancillary things, I'd bleed myself that when the big battle came, we couldn't afford to fight it, right? So, I'm very pleased with our size, and God's blessed us, but we're not big enough to take on everything that comes to our front door. So the way that we make our decisions are, one, does it fit the purview of protecting the rights of the practicing chiropractor? And then number 2, is this an issue that is systemic? Is this something that's going to affect the profession as a whole? If it's not, we will help them by helping them find an attorney, or maybe even using our attorney, but it doesn't become our battle. We're there to support. And I've done that with a number of individuals where we've given them advice, or maybe we already had some resources that I could share with them to help them in their battle, or give them the name of a really good attorney that I know would do the fight. So we never turn anyone completely away, but the battles we take on, they have to stay within our parallel. And I don't want to sidetrack too much, but I want to explain why that's so important, because we can work with everybody in the industry, like everybody, because we're so narrow in our focus. We don't compete with anybody. We don't compete with the ACA. We don't compete with the ICA. We don't compete with state organizations. We don't compete with malpractice payers. We literally become an amazing add-on. The analogy we give is it's kind of like the Navy SEALs. The Navy SEALs works with the Army. They work with the Air Force. They work with the Navy. Of course, they're part of the Navy, but they're there to be a tool for a specific need to help accomplish a specific task. That's what we are within the Chiropractic Defense Council and One Chiropractic. We have a very specific skill set. We will work with anybody to go in and achieve a goal, as long as it's aligned with our vision of making chiropractic the number one healthcare choice in the world. And so it's been amazing. We're working with the Clinical Compass. We're working with the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress. We're working with a number of state organizations. We've worked with national organizations on specific issues because, again, we bring that skill set where it saves their resources. they don't have to use membership dollars to pay the big chunk because I've already got it built into my retainers with my attorneys. So it's become a phenomenal model for our profession to show how we actually can play in the same sandbox and not attack each other. We can actually, there's strength in that organization. So we've been proud to kind of be the catalyst to start those types of conversations within the organizations in our profession.
Yeah, and that's why this conversation is so relevant, because I think there's very few students that are aware of your organization, and the more awareness we have, I believe the more you'll get support, and power in numbers is how we accomplish more. So right. On that note, how would things, I'm just curious, two-part question. One is, are there other professions that you've looked at and maybe taken pages out of their book as far as like the playbook that they're using to fill the needs that you're addressing for this profession? I'm just curious if there's like a version of you for other types of professions out there. Obviously, chiropractic has unique needs. Maybe we'll just start with that, and I'll save the other questions so we stay on track.
Okay. No, which is very surprising. As we've gone through this, again, we launched in July of 2000. And so it was right before COVID really took off, before vaccines, all of that kind of stuff, right? There were still a lot of questions. So we weren't formed because of COVID, but as God's timing is always perfect, COVID became a catalyst to grow us quick. We went from 300 contributors to almost 4,000 contributors in 2 months. Like, it was incredible, our growth, which really enabled us to really hit the ground running when it comes to building our legal team. But as we got into that, I was looking in other professions, like, we can't be the only ones doing this. And what happened was all of these other professions were coming to us because they had nowhere to turn. They didn't have, I mean, that was an isolated issue, right? The allopathic world, maybe 10 to 15% of them didn't want to be vaccinated, right? But they had nowhere to turn. There was no organization that was doing what we were doing. So what ended up happening was I ended up bringing them into our fold for a little while, protecting them like we were our chiros, but then helping them build what we're doing there. And it's really the craziest thing. And you've been around the profession long enough to know, and if it's students watching this, you may have heard this, or maybe you've experienced it already within your school. But our profession is not organized. Like, we don't we don't function well. But these other groups were like, oh my gosh, you chiropractors are so organized. I wish our profession was as organized as you were. And they were obviously talking about our organization and the way that we communicated and how quickly, because I shoot videos every single week updating everybody on what's going on, where, why, how. We're very big on communication. So people never had to wonder where the battle was at, what step they needed to take, how they needed to protect themselves, so on and so forth. And so what we ended up doing, now we're 3 years into this, is we've actually started to build versions of us within these other professions, not us owning it, but helping them, kind of mentoring them to build a similar framework, because there was nothing there's never been anything that works like the way we work, where we stick to our lane. We only do the things for chiropractors. The entrepreneurial side of me is like, well, hell, let's build something. Let's let everyone in. Let's build this whole consortium of PTs and naturopaths and acupuncturists. The problem is that's great in one fight, but then what happens? Now, when people are putting money in, they feel like they have a say. And now I'm serving so many different masters. And we just decided as an organization, as amazing as something like that would be, that's not our call, because that would water down chiropractic. We wouldn't be able to really take on chiropractic issues, because what would happen is we would actually probably acquire more specialties than chiropractic, and that we would be the minority of the group. And so if you did it the democratic way, we'd be taking on issues that had nothing to do with chiro, even though we're a chiro organization. So we just said no, as a matter of fact, and we lost maybe 300, 400, 500 contributors. But I was happy to do that, because I just told them we were happy to help you here, but as of this date, we're only doing it for chiro. We're a chiro organization. So that proved to be a wise step, because it really emboldened the trust of our chiropractors that we were not going to be like any other organization that is all about growth at all costs. But we were committed to our particular cause. And the bottom line is, my passion is chiropractic, period. My daughter just graduated Sherman. My son's headed to life in October. I'm all in. Like, this is my life. It has been for 26 years. It's all I want to do. It's the only thing I'm good at. And so, we want to stick with that lane. So surprisingly, we kind of wrote the book on the work that we're doing. And we're mentoring other people now because it's been such a successful model.
And because I'm so passionate and focused on just chiropractic, I just would love for us to just really dig in. I think that where that thought came from, you're finding success, supporting the profession, and now you're seeing how this is a gap in other professions. I think that also came, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, from the recognition that chiropractic doesn't really have a lot of advocacy projects that you could then turn your focus to and really invest a lot of resources and time and lawyership, so we call it. I don't know what the right term is, but basically just to kind of piggyback on your idea that we're not organized as a profession. This project I've been working on for many years now, and this is not about me. I consider myself like a one-man think tank, and I'm just having these conversations with people that matter in the profession so that I can highlight it and try and connect the dots so that we can be more functional as a group, shall we say. But there's no chiropractors in health centers on college campuses. There's no chiropractors teaching in every college and university's kinesiology department. There's no pre-chiropractic presence in guidance counselor conversations at high schools or colleges. And I can go on into the middle schools and elementary schools, and the fact that there's just no chiropractic presence in that sort of developmental hierarchy, shall we say, or life cycle of a student in education. So I just put that out there, planting little seeds to you of like, if we had, say, another $10 million trickle in because people were interested in some of these types of issues that I just mentioned, how could the lawyers, and how could, maybe let's just not say the lawyers, let's just say you and your team help out with making some of these missions and visions of expanding the profession's reach to the people that really are being left out of the conversation or forgotten about, which is the high school and college and prospective student audience. Like, how could your team really be helpful for a project like this, which is really trying to connect and organize the profession and then expose people as early and often as possible to the gift of chiropractic?
Yeah. So first of all, I love your vision and I agree with you. We have a couple barriers that even are aside from our organizational structure. One of them, the reason we're not in those places is there's only 85 licensed chiropractors, arguably 73,000 actually working. So when you compare that to PTs or MDs or DOs, they're in the millions of providers. So there's just a saturation factor, which is why you have MDs and nurses and all these people everywhere, because it's just a sheer volume number of them that exist makes them more accessible, right? So it's a chicken and the egg thing, but we have got to get more people into chiropractic school. If we produce more chiropractors, we will naturally start saturating certain environments. So, we just have to. I mean, we've only got 18 schools now here in the United States. And again, those 18 schools spend more time shooting shots at each other than they do working together to grow, right? It's just so asinine to me, the way that our profession exists, because it's like you've got the golden goose, but all you're trying to do is fight over what you're going to call it. And it's like, good Lord, just call it whatever you want. Let's just go. Let's just put it out there. So the second thing that makes our organization so unique is our strategic approach to everything. So we have a PR firm, we have lobbyists, we have attorneys, and I force them all to talk. I force them before we take on anything or we create a strategy. We're always breaking down and looking at the long-term effects of the decision right now. This is another problem that our profession has had. There's a problem right in front of it. They'll do whatever they can to fix that problem. Perfect case in point, in 82 when we got into Medicare. The greatest thing on the planet at that time, because up to that point, the world didn't acknowledge. We went through the 70s where chiropractors were getting arrested for not being licensed or practicing without a license. We had that whole segment of our history between the 60s all the way up to the early 80s. And so it was a big win for us. but we didn't think past that win. And what we did is we put ourselves in a box because we didn't think 20 years down the road, what would this look like, and fight for what we needed right now to make sure that we were building a better future down the road. We will not make that mistake. I'm such a history buff for chiropractic, and every major win we've had was a win in that moment, but it's something that set us back 10 years that we have to fight. Insurance reimbursement is a perfect example. Managed care, if you look at the history of that, it was a 20-year decline in value, but we thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread when it came in the 80s. And so, what makes us so amazing, even the work we're doing with our military, it would be easy to go into the DOD and say, listen, we're the best at low back pain. We're the best at headaches, tons of data out there. But I refuse to have that conversation. My conversation is we are there for the whole health of your serviceman or woman. Like what we do helps them function better. It prevents injuries. It gets them back from injuries faster. I'm giving them the whole neurological picture because that's what I want the foundation to be. I don't want to just get in the military and then be treated like a redheaded stepchild within the healthcare, which is what happens in hospitals. It's what happens every time chiropractic gets in. We're shoved to the corner and we're somehow, a pariah. I want them to look at us and be like, holy hell, these guys are the answer to our problem. Let's go. Right. And so what makes us very strategic. So a case like yours, the vision you just gave, we would sit down and look at it and say, great, you have that pile of money, but hold on. It's about the relationships. It's about setting it up in the right place first. It's about making sure we have measurables. We would work with people like Dr. Heidi Hoag that is phenomenal at capturing data, making sure that it's publishable, because that's where the credibility comes from in the world, is when other people say that's validated, it's proven, it exists. And so we would want to look at that model, because I agree with you. If we targeted schools, one, that helps us with getting more people to chiropractic school, but that's the most influential body. That's a generation that you can, literally, if you want to fix a problem, change a generation, get to an age demographic and saturate that demographic. And as they age and everyone else dies off, their belief systems go with it. Right. And so I love your vision, because it is true. If we were able to really saturate high schools and careers and in that early stage of early employment and working, and teach them the chiropractic mindset, even if they don't go into chiropractic, but just teach them the mindset so that they take that mindset into whatever it is they go into, our world's going to be a better place. So to me, it would be all about looking at where we start this off. What is the ultimate outcome we're after, making sure there's measurables put in place, and then finding the right people with the right skill sets to do it. That's another problem we have in chiropractic. We'll take anyone that raises their hand. And with all due respect, I appreciate their desire to help, but half of them do not possess the skill set that's necessary to actually accomplish the goal. And so we got to be honest and be like, no, we're only taking the people that absolutely have the skill set to deliver what we want out of this effort. And I've made a lot of enemies by saying, love you, love your heart, but no way are you involved in this, because you will blow this up. You're too passionate. You're too angry. I can't put you in a meeting. I know you love the military, but no, I am not, so you gotta be that way. Right. And find a place for them, but also care about the vision enough to be honest and say, no. So that's how I would approach that particular project.
And just to have this be in real time, if we could maybe just have a couple of minute quick strategic session here of like how we strengthen the experience of students within a chiropractic educational institution. Next quarter at Life West, I'm piloting a program on a volunteer basis, which they don't have any money in the budget, and I just want to be able to provide this. I used to work for institutional research for a couple quarters, and I was trying to create a research instrument that would detail the student experience in chiropractic education so that I could then go to high schools and colleges and describe from research what it was that students were allocating their time with and such and such. So anyway, long story short is the proposal that I submitted was that I thought that if we could allow every student to identify where their interests were, what specialized pathways they were interested in within the context of chiropractic practice, and then provide them with a little short 10 to 15 minute consultation, and then as a follow-up, connect them with resources that were relevant to their interests, that we could really strengthen their inner satisfaction with the chiropractic educational experience. And I'm just wondering from a strategic standpoint what your point of view is on that, because I think that we have to maybe start there and then reverse engineer. I mean, just to let you know, my strategic plan for this project is I've worked on organizing the program into quizzes and questionnaires. Quizzes just short multiple choice, questionnaires deeper, open-ended, emotionally engaging sort of reflection pieces on the 6 stages of pre-chiropractic. Once that's completed, which it should be completed in the next week or two, I'm going to be looking for students to give that to, and then get some feedback, reiterate it, and then get some endorsements from some chiropractic schools. Once I got some endorsements, my thought is to then go to the colleges and high schools and really start to figure out a way to implement the pre-chiropractic track in their college and institutions' curricular offerings. So look at their course catalog and identify the courses that can all be relevant enough to the pre-chiropractic track. And then we have maybe 4 or 5 3-credit courses that we get, made eligible. And now all of a sudden they have a pre-chiropractic program that hopefully schools will one day acknowledge. I'm not trying to create a different type of MCAT. It's more experiential, qualitative, sure, quantitative outcomes. But anyway, just a lot of information that I just spewed out at you. But what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's necessary. So again, I have a very fresh perspective because my daughter just graduated Sherman in December. So like I went through that whole experience with her. And obviously I'm a pretty hands-on guy. It's a profession I love. And so I was pretty involved. She went to Sherman, which is a great school, but every school has its issues. Right. And so I'll take the first part of your statement. And so one of her passions was animal chiropractic, but Sherman had really nothing other than a club that was all student run. There were she had to find a company in Texas and do all this extra work. So the idea that you would question the students and say, where do you want to go? And then supply them with the tools and the connections and the opportunities, I think is fantastic because it's really left to the student to do that work. And as you and I both know, only 10% of them are going to actually do the work. My daughter was obviously the exception. She was very motivated and she did the work she needed to do, but there were so many other people that would love to have done that, but they didn't have that self-perpetuating motivation to go do it. So if organizations like yours were connected with the school and really said, we want to supply you and support you and your track, I think that's phenomenal. And I think what that would also do is it would create an excitement in the student that they are able to automatically start doing the stuff they love rather than waiting until they graduate to do the stuff they love, right? Because the schools, whether anyone wants to admit it or not, their job's to get them past boards. That's it. They say they care about everything after that, but they don't because they can't, because their business model, their accreditation determines on the percentage of students that pass. So that's all they care about is getting them graduated and through the boards because that's what they're measured for their accreditation. So there needs to be some outside support system to help in that regard. Now, the second part of what you were talking about with the pre-chiropractic track, I have a little bit of experience with that as well, because there's where my kids went to their undergrad, it's called Mount Vernon Nazarene University. And so I wanted to do the very same thing just because I wanted my kids to not have to take unnecessary courses while they were in their undergrad before they went to chiro. And I didn't want them to do the abbreviated where they did 3 years at the undergrad, went to the chiro program, I wanted them to have their college experience. I didn't want them to rush into being a doctor. And so I spent a lot of time with the provost and at the undergrad and trying to explain, and connected them with Life University on this side of the country here. And we were able to build a pathway where that we could build that particular thing. And it was awesome because then we got to do, like, any of the students coming in that wanted to do anything within the health sciences, we got to talk about chiropractic and let them know that this pre-chiropractic track is available. So it was a fun opportunity. So it was the vision of everything you're saying. I was able to do that on a very small scale at a very small private Christian school. But it can be done. And there is a pathway to do that. And I couldn't even imagine how awesome that would be to have a system to be able to take to any university, any size, and say, here's what the pre-chiropractic looks like. Here are the colleges that participate with it, the chiro schools that participate with it. And we would love to have this as a pathway for some of your students. I mean, all the data supports the growth of chiropractic and the satisfaction of chiropractors and, all that stuff that the colleges care about. So I think that'd be fantastic. I mean, I don't know anyone else doing that work,
No.
but that would be absolutely amazing if you were able to build something like that. So I think, yes, to support the existing students, and yes, to create a pre-chiro track that you could plug into universities around the United States, I think would be phenomenal.
Two things. One, I'm curious about what your experience was bringing chiropractic's presence into that small school that your children went to for undergrad. If you could maybe talk about the students as they got exposure to chiropractic, whether it increased their interest in chiropractic or it decreased their interest in chiropractic. That's one thing. And then two, well, maybe just speak on that. If you were able to expose students to chiropractic, was it repelling them away or was it attracting them towards chiropractic? Because my point of view is that if people knew what chiropractic was and knew truly the opportunities that existed within the profession, that it could make a difference in their life trajectory.
Listen, it's a day one. I mean, for anyone that's owned a clinic, it's a day one. I mean, you're going in there and you're talking to people. You don't know what their knowledge level is of the profession at all. But rather than trying to talk them into becoming a patient, you're explaining to them the opportunities of them being a part of a profession that is bigger. So it was phenomenal. No repelling whatsoever. I mean, it was more of like people going, really? Wow, I had no idea what chiropractors did. And I had no idea that chiropractors were that educated. That was probably the biggest thing, was explaining to them that a chiropractor had, I hate to say more, but equal to, and definitely more in some areas than MDs and DOs. I mean, when it comes to examining the human body, kinesiology, understanding how the kinetic chain works and really how the body functions as a unit, by far chiropractors are more educated than any other physician on record. But most people think chiropractors have a lower education, substantially lower. And so just being able to say that to a group of 30 random kids in a room, that's going to leave an impact in them, whether they choose chiropractic or not. Right. I say all the time when I'm teaching that the chiropractic message is almost as transformational as the gospel. Like, those that are going to hear it and listen, you are not the same after you hear it. When you start understanding the connection of the brain and the body and how your body adapts to stress and how the adjustment actually helps to create better neuroplasticity in the brain, which is why chiropractic patients have so many various positive reactions to the adjustment. And it's why those that go to chiropractors love them. People either love chiropractors or they hate them. But if they love them, they're in, right? I mean, you know that from your practice. So when you're able to just share that little bit of truth to a group of kids that are trying to make decisions on what they want to do with their life, it's transformational. We did, obviously, there was a growth pattern. We ended up, I think, out of that school, we've now had 39 kids go to chiropractic school that would have probably no other reason to go. So I'm very proud of that over the 15 years that we've been working with them. But it of the students that didn't choose it, they still chose PT or they still chose the medical route. They at least now have a better foundation of understanding of chiropractic, that when they hear the garbage they're going to hear through their education, they're going to be like, well, wait a minute. There was that little chubby guy that came in and talked to me about, this, that, right? So that's what I'm proud of, right? I was the same way with parenting. I wanted my kids to learn all the junk from me first, so that when they heard it from their friends, there was at least a baseline of truth to measure.
That's exactly the premise. Is no matter what chiropractic school you choose, even if you don't go to chiropractic school, if you go through a pre-chiropractic program that's structured, intentional, clear, deep, wide, it's so robust that it forces you to go and have experiences and make observations and do demonstrations, that you have no choice but to be like really aware of what is and what isn't congruent. Two things. One thing that slipped my mind before was that I've interviewed like 5 or 7 different animal chiropractors and asked them to tease out all the details of not only their training. Some of them are offering trainings, and then some of them are just teasing out the details of what it's like to be an animal chiropractor. And if they could go back and do it all over again, how they would have structured their chiropractic experience, their chiropractic student experience. So those are the types of conversations that I'm having with every person that I have on this. This is about the 300th conversation that I'm having on this platform, and every single conversation is all about what should students do to go down your specialized pathway. So I'm wondering, before I ask you, like, what could we do to get students to be maybe a little bit more relevant to the work that you're doing, or maybe teach them how to be helpful, or give them opportunities to be helpful to the work that you're doing. I'd also like to just touch on one thing that was really hitting home when you were talking, which was that if we're starting a new chiropractic school in a new country, how do we properly contextualize that professional pathway to the people that are in that country? It's with pre-chiropractic. And then also within countries where it's already established, maybe we don't need to open new schools, but if we open new pre-chiropractic track offerings at different schools, that it just increases the like you said, like the collective, this new era, the new era that we're ushering in has shared experiences, so they're less likely to judge unknowingly other people from other schools, because we do that a lot. You've mentioned it already. Students have opinions about students at other schools and have never even been to that campus or talked to the students on that campus. But anyway, I'm just curious about that question about, like, how can we maybe provide trainings that prime certain students that are really interested in the work that you're describing to maybe get involved or to support, minus the checkbooks, because they are students. However, you know, maybe that's possible from a family member. I'm sure that there's people that have family members that would be willing to donate. It's just, I'm curious if you could get creative with me there.
Yeah. So first of all, I just got back from Australia. I just spent a month over in Australia and New Zealand because of a lot of the work that we're doing for the Defense Council. And I got an opportunity to talk to two, schools there, New Zealand Chiropractic College, which is a phenomenal school, and the Australian Chiropractic College, which is fairly new. They've been only around for 4 years. And there's just such a need for this everywhere. Historically, most people find chiropractic from a chiropractor telling them you should be a chiropractor, right? That's typically the pathway that most students find. I can't even imagine a world where people are finding it because it just intellectually makes sense to them, and they're going because their undergrad had a pre-chiropractic track. So Ben, I love your vision. I really, really do. I think it fits in perfect alignment with the world that I see 20 years from now. So I think all that's fantastic. As far as what students can do from, like, my niche of the world, first and foremost is, do not follow the sins of your predecessors and stop seeing your colleagues as competitors. We have to celebrate our differences in chiropractic. And if we don't get this next generation of chiropractors to not take on the fight of the guys that are retiring and dying, that'd be the best thing ever. Like, we've got to stop the Hatfield and McCoy, excuse my French, but bullshit that's been happening in our profession. I don't care if you're a mechanistic or vitalistic. I don't care, mixer, straight, whatever the hell the terminology is these days. I have my personal belief. I'm a vitalistic guy. My clinic is very vitalistic. We adjust, we're wellness. Everyone gets adjusted once a week. Like, that's my personal belief system. But the work that I do is for chiropractic as a whole. I'm glad there are people that are mechanistic and they only want to deal with pain, because I don't. And so but people still need chiropractic. And so I refer over to them. We don't do Medicare. We don't do personal injury. We don't do workers' comp. So I'm glad there are doctors that do, that I can refer people over to them, because that's not our thing. Our thing is wellness, lifestyle care. And so when we can celebrate those differences and we realize there's strength in that organization, like if chiropractors in one community accepted what they loved about the profession, like what you're strengthening them while they're in school with whatever path they want to go down, whether it's sports chiropractic, pregnancies, pediatrics, PI, workers' comp, whatever. The idea that chiropractors have to be everything to everybody is old fashioned. People don't want to be everything to everybody because we don't like everybody. Like, there are a lot of patients. I'm very happy we're not dealing with Medicare people, because I beat the hell out of every old person that came in and wouldn't shut up. Right. That's just not me. That's not my thing. So I'm good with that. But I love that I've got a couple chiros down the street that love old people. And I tell my old people, listen, I'm sorry we can't help you. I love that you were attracted to us, but Dr. Simons down the road is phenomenal. I promise you, his office is more suited for what you need. He's a great chiropractor. You're going to get great care, and you're going to be way happier there than you would here. Right. I mean, and that's the God's honest truth. Right. And I'm not looking at them as they're going to help me pay payroll next week. Right. So students need to own that mentality now, because our organization is all about organizing the profession. We do that through defense and advocacy, but we have to organize. Like, our funding works from a bunch of people doing a little bit, right? I don't want people giving me a bunch of money. I want a bunch of people giving me a little bit of money, because that helps us achieve our ultimate goal, which is to organize the profession. So if this generation now that's in school, if you can learn how to organize within your own school, learn how to celebrate your differences, no matter what technique. I know the gondroids are a pain in the ass. I know they are. I love them, but they are. They love their technique. Their technique's the best. They've been around forever. But then you meet a CBP person and their technique is the best. And these are the issues that you have in school. Knee chest, which, is still taught at every school, but, these people are die hard in their technique. Accept other techniques and be happy that people are doing something different than you're doing, because that's how we're able to help the masses. So the sooner that we can celebrate our differences, learn how to organize that, and there's such power in the fact that we can organize around our differences. That's what needs to happen with this generation. I don't need your money. I need you to start changing your consciousness, and I need you to stop doing the same insane behavior that your predecessors in chiropractic have done. You don't have to do insurance to succeed. You don't have to be cash to succeed. You have to figure out what you love. When you're passionate about what you love, you'll find a way to be successful at it. But it doesn't mean anyone else is wrong. It just means you have a specific calling on your life, and your job's to figure out what that is and how to make a good living doing it. And chiropractic is the best profession on the planet that allows you to do that. I have people that all they see are children up to the age 8. They don't see the parents. They don't see anyone. They just see the children up to the age 8, and they're killing it because they made that conscious decision. Now, the entrepreneurial brain is like, why in the hell wouldn't you see the parents? They're there because that's not what they want to do. They don't like dealing with older people. They're harder patients. There's way too much arthritis and counterindications and muscle memory. Kids, they love because they can get them better quick and they can keep them happy. And so their office is built like, that's what needs to happen in today's generation of students, is to accept that. Don't graduate. Know that you have 6 months until your loans come due, and just do whatever it takes to survive. The generation before you did that, and look where we're at. We need people graduating. And Ben, that's why I love your vision of drowning people with support while they're in school for the path that they want to practice, so that they have the confidence when they come out to just do it, and not, well, I got to get into every insurance that's in my area. I got to do this. I got to do that. And it robs all your joy from being a chiropractor. I want you to be so passionate about your purpose that you can build something that no one else has ever built. Chiropractic's a perfect profession to do that. Like, it's rewarded, it's celebrated in our profession to build something that no one else has ever built. So, that's what students can do. I mean, I could go on and be on the soapbox on this, but if you do that, you're helping us. Because now when we want to organize, you already have the mindset that, oh, well, duh, yeah, we're stronger as a group than we are as individuals. Yeah, let's jump and be involved. So when you have the resources, you'll give them, because we're an organization that's celebrating the organization of our profession rather than the segregation.
Well said. Well said. I'm curious, from your vantage point, who are the most organized organizations? Who are the most effective and well-functioning organizations that you've observed within the chiropractic profession?
You are a dirty dog for asking that question. It's kind of like saying, who do you like the least that's in your friend group? So I will tell you this, and I didn't always believe this. This has been over the last 5 years. The Foundation for Chiropractic Progress has done phenomenal work. As a matter of fact, and we can talk offline, but you need to talk to them because they're doing some college stuff now that is off the charts, that you could help them and they can help you. And I think Sherry needs to get a little peek into your mind, Dr. McAllister, who's the CEO of the foundation, because that's a conversation that needs to happen. But I am so impressed with how they're operating right now. You can see it in the results that they're providing as an organization. They're very similar to us, where they stay in their lane. They only do what they do, but they've really learned from their first 15 years of existence on what doesn't work. And now I couldn't be prouder. And I was not a fan. I'll be the first to tell you, they didn't like me because I'm a very vocal person. If I don't like what's happening, I'm not going to lie about it. But I'm so blown away. And we've been able to really do some things together. Like I just brought them into Australia and New Zealand because of the work that we're doing there. And it's been incredible because they're so good at their thing and that's all they do. I'm very, very impressed with them.
I'm just curious, what is their thing? If you could kind of simply put it, what is their sort of lane that they stay in?
All they do is positive press for chiropractic. That's it. That's all they do. They look for opportunities to share positive information about chiropractic. That could be anything from TV commercials to billboards to magazine articles to social media posts to any of those things. They're looking for opportunities to put chiropractic in front of people in a positive way. And so when things hit like the stroke garbage and all of that, they're the organization that has the ability to respond to that, to make sure that we're putting chiropractic into the positive organization. And they didn't always do a great job of that. Just like a lot of chiropractic clinics weren't that great when they first started. You got to learn your groove, but they are in their groove now. The Olympic commercial they did during the past Olympics, I mean, it won so many awards. It lost to Pepsi and Doritos. I mean, that's who it lost to. And then it beat everybody else, Nike, all that stuff. Like they're just doing really a good job of elevating the vision. So we're no longer the dumb brother on 2.5 Men, right? That's what media thinks of chiropractic. We're the weirdos, Jacob's Ladder, the psychopathic guy that's trying to kill his kid, right? That's the impression of chiropractic in most media formats. They're doing a very good job of elevating that now and showing the reality of what we're doing. And so, but they don't get into getting you new patients. Like their job's on branding, not marketing, if that makes sense. And they're doing a phenomenal job of it.
Yeah, no, I've interviewed Sherry McAllister. I'm not sure I was really clear as to what the foundation did after that conversation. So that was really helpful. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I just asked you that question because I'm really in pursuit of highlighting and identifying and spotlighting every single little aspect, every nook and cranny of this profession so that, as you said, we can become more connected, more organized, more respectful. We can leverage our efforts. We can collaborate together. I think that
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I had another one that just popped into my head when you said that. Chiro matchmakers. One of them, and this is relevant to your little genre. They're one of the best because one of the big issues, chiropractic is growing. I mean, like the chiropractors that are speaking truth and have stuck to their guns during all this, pandemic garbage, they're busier than ever. So there's a shortage of chiropractors. Like clinics are growing. Like it took me forever to find an associate, and we're paying $80,000 guaranteed plus bonuses plus. I mean, it's a very good package, way different than what was available to you when you graduated. It is available now. But Chiro Matchmakers is doing a phenomenal job of really doing the due diligence to make sure that people are getting placed at the right offices for the right reasons. They do it. So they're basically a headhunting organization within chiropractic, but there's such a philosophy that's ingrained in what they're doing that they're literally just breaking the mold. They're a phenomenally run organization. Their results are, I think they're at 95% of retention rate of placing doctors, which for associates, that's unheard of. Like that doesn't happen. So that would be a great group because they're trying to reach students as well, helping students to understand how to make themselves marketable, how to do that. So they'd be a phenomenal interview for you.
Yeah, definitely interviewed Alan Miner over there.
Oh, so you already know. Okay.
Stephen Franson. I like to consider myself the most resourceful chiropractor out there. Like I'm very well aware of I've done the European interviews, Australian interviews, New Zealand interviews. I'm really trying to highlight the not awesome. The who's who, but just make it really easy and organized. So I like to consider myself a one-man think tank over here. But
that's great.
Yeah, man, just working hard. Appreciate you vibing with me on this conversation this afternoon. I really loved everything that you were talking about. It was like we're on the same page.
Yeah.
You're actually making things happen though, and that's Not something that I hear very often out of all these conversations. People are definitely more like self-serving. They like to talk about themselves, but you're more talking about bigger picture, the profession, serving the profession. I like to say that this project is adjusting the profession, because from my premise, there's many subluxations, but the primary subluxation is in that sort of pre-chiropractic absence of experience, awareness, understanding, clarity. The choice to go to chiropractic school is usually a fallback option, not a primary choice. And we need more of that, like, primary choice. Students are running to chiropractic school because they're like, I found something that's inspiring, challenging, is not going to be easy, is going to be dynamic, and force me to step out of my comfort zone on an everyday basis, multiple times a day. So really excited to bring it to this world, and thank you for being a support of it. I know that you're supportive of it.
You're doing phenomenal work, Ben, and you have my full support. So anything that we can do to help you in those efforts, all you gotta do is ask.